Good evening, everyone. As you'll see on this slide, we have a few housekeeping items for you all to note. So today we are going over our litigation and regulatory practice groups, and we will do a highlight of that and then have a panel discussion. You'll note that all participants are muted and have their camera off, but should you have any questions, please use the chat feature and we will address those when the time comes. Thank you all for being here. If your question does not get answered live, we will do our best to follow up. Our team will also be monitoring the chat for any questions that we don't get a chance to answer live. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Stephanie to introduce herself and the rest of our panelists. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, Tiffany. Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Noble. I am a litigation partner in our Houston office. My practice consists of commercial litigation work, a kind of a general commercial litigation practice with also a specialty in energy, construction, and power sector litigation matters. And so now I'll turn it over to Timber to introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Timber Shriver. I'm a senior associate in the litigation group in the New York office. Much like Stephanie's practice, I deal with a lot of commercial and business litigation, a touch of white collar, but a bit of a generalist still.
And my name is Alyssa Sija. I am a fourth-year associate in our environmental and natural resources group in our Washington, D.C. office. So you'll hear a little bit more about these groups later, but in the environmental group, we kind of do a mix of litigation, regulatory work, and transactional work. So I kind of do a little bit of everything within the environmental realm.
Great. Well, excited to chat with all of you, with my co-presenters this evening. So if we could go to the next slide, please. We wanted to talk a little bit about the way that our litigation and regulatory department is structured and kind of where it fits within the firm. Each law firm is organized differently, so just wanted to take a minute to explain our structure. V&E is divided into 3 departments. We have the transactional department, the tax, executive compensation and benefits department, also known as tax ECB, and then we have the lit reg department, our litigation and regulatory department. And each department has various practice groups within it, which we've shown here. And the percentages are based on the number of lawyers within each department. And so today we're going to be focusing on the litigation and regulatory department. And I'll just add that cross-office and cross-practice work is part of the culture here at V&E, and getting the right team staffed on matters to provide the best solutions for clients is our focus, not necessarily where you sit, and we keep inclusive teams top of mind. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So to give a high-level overview of the department, these are the 6 different practice groups that fall within the litigation and regulatory group. We're going to be focusing on CCL, employment, complex commercial litigation, which we refer to as CCL, employment, energy regulatory, and environmental today, just given that appellate and condemnation do not take summer associates at this time. But CCL, or the litigation group, is the group that I'm involved in. That's where our trial lawyers sit, and in that group, our trial lawyers handle high stakes cases in state and federal courts and before domestic and international arbitration tribunals around the world. The cases our lawyers try typically involve large commercial contracts, disputes arising from corporate acquisitions and divestitures, securities and D&O litigation, antitrust claims, royalty and licensing disputes, and business torts such as fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, misappropriation of trade secrets, and unfair competition. Our trial teams often involve lawyers from the firm's specialty groups like tax and environmental, which enables us to handle a broad array of disputes. Day-to-day work in CCL includes research, drafting motions and pleadings, factual development, depositions, hearings, trials, and strategy meetings, as well as pre-litigation counseling, providing advice to help clients strategically position themselves for trial or to avoid litigation altogether. Our employment group, our employment, labor, and OSHA group, which we refer to as ELO, that practice includes a mix of transactional work, advice and counsel, and litigation. A significant percentage of our work is dedicated to acting as key members of our corporate deal teams, leading employment-related due diligence, drafting and negotiating the employment aspects of transaction agreements, navigating union considerations, and structuring and drafting executive employment agreements and non-competition arrangements. In addition, ELO lawyers are counselors which provide day-to-day guidance related to some of our clients' most sensitive employment matters, lead internal investigations, assist with large-scale layoffs and employee matters and bankruptcies, navigate executive separations, and advise regarding public company disclosures. Our lawyers also respond to and manage employment disputes, including litigation and arbitration of topics such as unfair competition disputes, including related to non-competition employee rating and misappropriation of confidential information, executive agreement disputes, discrimination and harassment claims, and whistleblower actions. Our energy regulatory or EREG group consists of V&E lawyers that represent clients before the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, the Department of Energy, and other federal agencies, regional transmission organizations, the Texas Railroad Commission, and the Public Utility Commission of Texas and other state agencies. The practice comprises complex permitting, transactional, regulatory, and litigation components that support a full range of matters, including those associated with project development, regulatory investigations, setting rates and terms and conditions of service for regulated assets, operational compliance, and support for mergers and acquisitions. And last but not least is environmental, or ENR, as we refer to it sometimes. And that's our environmental and natural resources attorneys, where they advise and defend companies on issues arising under a wide range of federal and state environmental, natural resources, and safety laws and regulations. Our lawyers defend criminal, civil, and administrative enforcement actions and citizen suit litigation. We also defend companies in Superfund litigation and private party claims alleging injury or damage from environmental exposure. The ENR group advises companies on responses to emergencies such as fires and explosions and oil spills. In transactions, our lawyers advise on the nature and allocation of potential environmental liabilities and assist companies with obtaining environmental permits and authorizations for operations. So if we can go to the next slide, please. This slide just represents the number of lawyers by practice group in the Lit Reg department. So as you can see, the CCL or litigation group has the largest number of lawyers in Lit Reg, followed by energy regulatory and then environmental. And then we have 10 appellate lawyers, 8 ELO or employment lawyers, and 3 condemnation lawyers. Next slide, please. And last, I wanted to reference some of the primary disciplines and practice specialties within the CCL or complex commercial litigation group. I think I saw a question in the chat about where white collar investigations would fall, and that would be within the CCL or litigation group. So the 4 main disciplines in CCL are trials and litigation, counseling and regulatory, alternative dispute resolution, and investigation. And that work falls into a number of sub-practice group specialties, all housed within the CCL umbrella. And those subspecialties or practice specialties include antitrust, commercial and business litigation, domestic and international construction, cybersecurity and data privacy, energy litigation, government contracts, intellectual property litigation, international dispute resolution and arbitration, national security and CFIUS, law firm defense litigation, shareholder litigation and enforcement or securities litigation, and government investigations and white collar criminal defense. So now that we've done an overview of the Lit Reg department, we'll now kind of bring the evening into the discussion portion, the panel discussion, and I think we can take down the share screen. And now we'll go to a few questions that we had prepared for the panel. So I'll start with Timber. What types of training did you receive as an associate?
All varieties. So law school obviously prepares you to be a lawyer. It prepares those analytical skills that you get from law school, but getting to the firm, I don't know that I really understood what securities litigation looked like in practice. And so that was a really important series for me to engage in understanding kind of the ins and outs of that, corporate governance. V&E offers really great training for basically every aspect of litigation. I've even revisited some of those as a senior associate. And I think you can rest assured that in joining a firm, you're going to get all of the training that you need to do the job that you need to do. I particularly sought out anything related to sharpening writing skills, for instance, because it's something we do all the time.
Great. Thanks so much, Timber. And Alyssa, what type of training did you receive as an associate?
Yeah, like Timber said, I think there's a lot of different types of trainings that we get, both formal and kind of informal trainings. New associates, so when I started as a new associate, you kind of go through a lot of different trainings, just to kind of give you base level knowledge of, you know, like more things about the firm, and what the different groups do at the firm. So like kind of more orienting new associates. And then within the Lit Reg group, which we're discussing today, there's a lot of formal trainings about litigation. So earlier this year, I went to Houston for deposition training, which was like a 3-day training with a lot of prep. And you basically prepare to take depositions, and they have actors and actresses play the deponents, and you're kind of in it for like the whole day. And then you get partner feedback. So it's a very like intense type of training. But it was the first experience I've ever had with depositions, and I think I learned a lot. And then we also do a lot of professional development type trainings. So I know right now we're going through a series for mid-level and senior associates about managing, delegating, all types of different professional skills, which aren't really practice specific, but still really helpful in the practice of law. And then in environmental specifically, we do a lot of like environmental specific trainings, which are typically hosted by partners in our group. So certain partners will have topics that they want to kind of train all the associates on, and we will have trainings that are typically like held over lunch, and we kind of have lunch and discuss different topics specific to environmental law.
Yeah, thank you for that, Alyssa. I'll just add on to that and say that we try to do a good job of mixing on-the-job training, which is, of course, is some of the stickiest stuff that you encounter, when you live it and you actually are doing it for your clients. That's the on-the-job training that really sticks with you. But we try to make sure that that is mixed in with training, formal training that we have at the firm for certain skills that we know that we're expecting our associates to be able to do. The deposition workshop that Alyssa mentioned is something that we do every other year. And in the year that we're not doing the deposition workshop, we do a trial workshop, which is similar to what she mentioned, where we bring in actors, and instead of practicing deposition skills, we're actually going through the different steps of a trial. Our associates do opening, they do closing, they do direct examination, cross-examination, and they're kind of working through the entirety of those skills over the course of a number of days. And we have partners from our litigation group. I've served as faculty a number of times as part of this, where we go and we provide feedback. And it's really fun because you learn things, just serving as faculty too. You're kind of picking up different skills, and it's just an opportunity for us all to get together and talk about the craft of being a trial lawyer and a litigator. And as Timber mentioned, we also have a lot of different types of writing training throughout the year. And so we have partners who they're like a big part of their administrative responsibility at the firm is ensuring that our training program is robust and can apply to a lot of the different specialties within lit reg. Because some of our environmental associates may not be in depositions as frequently as our CCL lawyers may be. And so, our CCL lawyers may be, going to depositions a lot and being in court and like arguing motions more frequently, but our environmental associates still want that training and to be able to be versant in that. And so we're trying to make sure to have an even playing field with the training and getting all of our lit reg associates involved in that. I did see a question in the chat that I wanted to address, which is how do you know which offices have lawyers with certain specializations? The question in the chat references, being in Austin, and if anyone in the Austin office does antitrust. I would encourage you guys to look at the website. I think our website is easy to kind of navigate in that regard. You can categorize folks and people, attorneys in our firm by location and also by specialty. So you can see if there are any kind of antitrust lawyers in a particular office and look for information that way. I think that's a really great resource. And that's an important question too. And a good thing to be thinking about. Okay, so Alyssa, I'm going to ask you the next question first, which is what type of classes would you recommend for students?
Yeah, I think of this question very focused on environmental law, and kind of the classes that I think helped me a lot, and that would be administrative law because like we mentioned, our lit reg group does, in addition to litigation, it has a regulatory focus. So our energy regulatory group, our employment, labor, and OSHA group, and the environmental group does require some knowledge of like administrative law, regulations, um, administrative agencies. So I think administrative law was really helpful. And then just the environmental and energy survey courses that your school offers is generally helpful. But I think, kind of as Stephanie mentioned, a lot of the stuff that you learn, especially like in environmental law, you learn on the job and you're kind of teaching yourself. So I think although the classes can be really helpful, I don't think it's too much, like, don't put too much pressure on which classes you take specifically.
Amber, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I agree with Alyssa. In my practice, I focus on, as I said, I'm more of a generalist. So I think anything you can do to get writing experience, like I said earlier. So if there's like an advanced drafting course or maybe not classroom related, but a trial advocacy course or even moot court, anything you can do to get more writing, because I think as you advance in law school after your initial first year legal writing course, sometimes you don't necessarily get that experience, and it's so important for our practice. So that's kind of, base level. And then anything you can do to get like a more advanced civil procedure class is really helpful. Federal litigation, kind of anything that sounds litigation related would obviously be helpful. In addition to administrative law, for even a general litigator, I refer back to that curriculum all the time in my practice when certain aspects come up. Also, anything that you're interested in. If you think that you might be interested in energy law, take an energy law course, and it might be useful in your practice later on. If nothing else, I think it's good to get kind of your brain wrapped around a different sort of analysis, a different sort of area of the law. Um, yeah, I mean, I think those are like the main points. I'm sure there's other classes that I'm neglecting.
Yeah, I
Feel free
think that Timber, your point about taking classes that are interesting to you, I think is key, right? That's the most important thing. Take classes with professors that you think you'd really like. Law school, you guys just all started. And so you probably don't appreciate that it goes by so fast and it's only 3 years. And so I know right now you're working through kind of a set group of classes. The 1L classes are all the same basically. But for your 2L and 3L year, it's really just 2 years where you get to pick your classes and pick your professors. And so there's in every school, there's the professors where every student will say you have to take one of their classes. There's probably multiple. And so I would say do that. But in my practice, I think it would have been really hard for me to hit the ground running if I hadn't have taken evidence. That like first and foremost, I use it every day, basically. Definitely an advanced civil procedure course. Um, I took Fed Courts, which was the kind of advanced civil procedure course that my school offered. Um, and to Timber's point, any kind of advanced writing course I think is helpful because those skills, are just so critical to any litigation practice, any litigation and regulatory practice. You're going to be writing and you're going to be using those muscles quite often. Okay, so next question. I'll go back. I'll start with Timber on this one. What have you seen that makes attorneys successful in your practice group?
I think enthusiasm, honestly. Enthusiasm for the opportunity to get to do something new, to learn a new, maybe, topic. Um, I think the attorneys who you'll end up working for want you to care about their case just as much as they do and care about their client and giving their client, top-notch work. And the more effort that you put in as an associate and the more indispensable you make yourself, the more opportunity that you get to do the stuff that you ultimately want to. I mean, in my practice, it's getting to go do your first deposition. Like that was so exciting for me. And I got there because I really dug into the facts and I made sure that I was always there when the partner needed something or the client had a question. And that, I mean, yes, it comes from um, like the knowledge that you learn in law school and the baseline that you're learning now, but it also just comes from the hard work and the dedication you put into your cases. And so I think enthusiasm is really key.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I would agree. Just being, curious too about your work, right? And kind of going the next step, like not just figuring out whatever the answer is in front of you, but why and what if, and kind of asking those questions. I think that that's something they're trying to teach you guys probably right now in law school is to think like that and kind of what's the next step in identifying issues. But in practice, I think what really fuels and makes a really great lawyer is someone who is enthusiastic about the work and just kind of always asking kind of the next question and wanting to dig in deeper. Alyssa, same question to you. What makes attorneys successful in your group?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna leapfrog off of one of the words you just mentioned, which is curiosity. I think the environmental, legal landscape right now is so vast and it changes so frequently. I feel like every time I wake up, there's a new something happening, either a regulation or a litigation or something that is changing the way that, environmental regulations are affecting companies and our clients. So I think you have to be able to teach yourself things and learn quickly. I think we tend to, environmental law, I think a lot of our partners specialize in specific areas of environmental law. But as associates, you're kind of expected to work with a lot of different partners. So sometimes you're doing, fuels regulation work, sometimes you're doing Clean Air Act work, sometimes you're doing oil spill, remediation work, and you kind of have to be able to like just jump in and kind of teach yourself about any given topic at any given time. So I think, the curiosity to learn and that is something that's really useful. I think a lot of people in the environmental and natural resources group in our office do have an environmental background. I think it's helpful. It's not critical by any means. I know there are a lot of people who don't. Um, but I think, you know, if you do take classes in law school or something that have environmental focus, it is helpful. Um, and then I would say, yeah, just an interest in kind of the changing landscape of environmental law is something very specific. And um, I think a lot of our, regulatory groups, like I mentioned, the energy regulatory group is very similar, where things are always kind of changing and you have to help advise your clients on that. So,
Yeah, great. Thanks so much. Alyssa, what does a day-to-day or a day in the life look for you? What does your day-to-day look like?
yeah, I think kind of going off of what I was just talking about, it varies a lot by day and even throughout the day. I think, like, in any given day, it's not uncommon for me to work on like 8 different matters because we are a specialist kind of group. So a lot of times, the work that we do is not, just one case all day long. Um, and me specifically, I work mostly on transactions. So not really litigation focused at all. Um, but so my day is typically, contract drafting, environmental due diligence. We do different types of support for corporate transactions that our corporate group, leads, and then the environmental team, it kind of supports related to environmental risks and liabilities. And then at the same time, I also help on a lot of different types of compliance advising. So whether or not that's related to a transaction. Um, so sometimes that involves, researching new regulations, potential changes in regulations, if we're hearing things might be changing, or, um, you know, if like a lot of times like the EPA will put out proposed rules or seek comments on them. So we'll help clients kind of prepare those. So I think like my days are all very different. Um, and I kind of never know what I'm going to get in a day, which I think I like. It kind of keeps me, you know, excited, I guess. It's definitely not a monotonous job. So I think I enjoy that.
And what about you, Timber? What do your day-to-day look like?
Well, I guess it depends on the kind of matters I'm working on at the time and what phase they're in. For instance, I did 2 trials this year, so for much of the year, my day to day looked like drafting pretrial brief. I would get in, I like to draft in the morning. Um, so drafting a brief, turning to maybe a draft of a direct or cross examination and witness prep. Um, and that's, some of the more exciting part of our jobs for sure, I think, is preparing for trial. The meet and confers that come along with that with opposing counsel in the court conferences and preparing for all those pretrial hearings and motions in limine hearings. So that was a good chunk of my year. But for instance, today, I worked on a response to a civil investigative demand issued to one of our clients by the Department of Justice, and kind of the strategy surrounding that and what documents we need to produce and communicating with the client expectations on how this investigation is going to proceed. Um, and some days it's like that. It's a lot of different correspondence with clients trying to calm any anxieties that they have about a process that they're really unfamiliar with and they've hired us to help them navigate it. Um, I have another case that is about to come out of a stay. So I'm planning a basically a litigation plan, discovery, how's that going to proceed? When do we want to do our depositions? And do we want to plan to file summary judgment? When will that be? Do we need an expert? And really just like that beginning phase, which is maybe the most exciting part. Uh, and then sometimes I'm dealing with discovery, and sometimes you're dealing with opposing counsel who really, really, really want some documents, and you really, really, really don't want to give it to them. And so you battle it out.
Yeah, those are the days where when I'm having a lot of calls with opposing counsel, that I usually do a little meditating. Okay,
Yeah.
well, we have some questions come in through the chat, so I thought we'd go to some of these quickly. So, one question was, what do you feel was the most beneficial honor society to join while in law school? So, I guess maybe was there a particular group or honor society that you really enjoyed in law school that you found beneficial? Or maybe we'll just open it up to kind of extracurriculars generally. Timber, you have any thoughts on that?
Um, I guess thinking about extracurriculars generally, I found law review really valuable. The connections I made, the writing experience you get. Editing is like a really valuable skill. And law review looks great on a resume. Similarly, moot court, being on the board of moot court is also great for those organization skills. Getting kind of stand and deliver, public speaking practice, as well as brief writing. Both of those I found really valuable, but I know that there are other extracurriculars and honor society out there that other people find equally valuable.
Yeah, I'll put just for, a trial practice, I'll put law review up there as, really important, and also a clinic. And that's something that you guys may have either like a trial ad class or a trial ad group, a mock trial or moot court group. But I did a clinic my third year of law school. So I was actually trying cases representing clients, and I found that to be really helpful. Um, and I just saw a question come in. Do you suggest moot court or mock trial to be more beneficial? I would say either one. Obviously, moot court is more geared toward an appellate practice versus mock trial being more of a trial practice. Um, and so, but they're both going to help you with your oral advocacy skills, which you're going to need in a litigation practice either way. And so, I mean, I think it's just a matter of preference. Who's the faculty member that's overseeing it? Which one do you like? Which one are your friends in? Which one do you think you're going to get the most out of and just enjoy more? And so, I think either of those would be worth your time if you're really interested in a litigation practice. So, Alyssa, I wanted to make sure you had an opportunity to answer just about kind of law school extracurriculars generally.
Yeah, I will hop on the law review train. I was on the law review board my third year of law school, and while it was a lot of work, and I think it's like overwhelming to volunteer for something that it's like, well, this doesn't help me with my classes, or like it doesn't feel like it will help you in the moment. I learned so much, and I read so much. I read so many articles that I would not have read. And you learn a lot about writing just by reading and editing a lot of people's work. So law review, I think, looking back, even though it was brutal in the moment, was really beneficial. And then for an environmental practice, I was in our school's Environmental and Energy Law Association. So I was active in that, and I got to meet a lot of people. Um, we would have practicing environmental attorneys come and speak, and as somebody on the board, we would get to interface with them, and I was able to make a lot of connections that way. So I think, anytime you can meet people, that's beneficial. So, always, I feel like law school is a lot of networking.
Yes, that's right. Um, right. And it's join the groups that you think you'd actually get something out of and enjoy. I think it's depth in that way instead of breadth. You don't want to join every club and every group and then not have enough time to really kind of get into the meat of it and actually get something out of it. So, um, what was, Alyssa, I'll ask this to you to start. And I think this is a fantastic question from the chat. What was the best piece of advice that you received in your application journey or your career journey generally?
Yeah, I think that is a good question. And I think mine was, and I think the reason that this advice even came to be was because I was very stressed about my 1L summer job, and, trying to find a job. And I was told, especially for environmental law, I think this is particularly true, to try a lot of different types of jobs. So, like I applied for law firm positions, government positions, nonprofit positions, and I think honestly being able to try all those different types of jobs. So my 1L year, I interned at the DOJ, in environmental torts. My 2L year, I was an extern at environmental nonprofit, and then my 2L summer, I was a summer associate at B&E. So I did kind of get to try all the different types of environmental law. Obviously not all the types, but three main types. And I think that is really beneficial because you kind of get to see, rather than just thinking like, oh, government work is definitely for me, you really get to experience it and try it out. Um, so I had a professor that kind of talked me through that and kind of talked me off the ledge, my 1L year. And I think looking back, it is really helpful advice.
That's great advice. And it's good to have a lot of different perspectives, and feel like you're not just kind of being guided to a career, that you have a choice in it. Like, oh, I want to do this and this is perfectly right for me. So that's great. Timber, what about you? Any words of wisdom that really stick out to you as you were kind of applying to firms and moving through your career?
I think the encouragement, and actually Alyssa mentioned it earlier about networking in law school and throughout your career is just, it's really important. Um, Throughout law school, I took advantage of, every opportunity to talk to a practicing attorney I went to law school in Colorado, talk to a practicing attorney in Denver about maybe like an externship that they have available, or something interesting that they do. I consulted multiple people about my law review article, and even if they weren't necessarily helpful, most of them were. It was like a really good connection and a contact point to have when I was going out after law school, and really building that network. I actually ended up, I clerked in Colorado, and then I moved to New York, and I moved to New York with no contacts. But I built that network up and had, 20,000 coffees, I think, with different firms out here. And those networking skills really came in handy, and they still come in handy every day. I mean, this practice is really all about who you know, and sometimes you're kind of networking with your opponent, like getting to know who they are and how they practice, and building a client list, and also just having friends in this industry is invaluable. So network all you can. It's fun. It's easy.
Yeah, and maintain relationships, right, throughout. It really is. It's incredible how frequently I run into people from law school, which is pretty incredible because I practice not in the city where I went to law school. But I keep in touch with folks who I went to school with, and I see them frequently. I mean, you know, just this year, two folks that I went to law school with who have since gone in house reached out, and I ended up working with them. They hired me. And so it's amazing how that network starts now. It starts where you guys are sitting right now in your 1L classes. And I know it's a lot. I know you're thinking, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to keep up with this reading. There's kind of a method to the madness because it's amazing how you go through something kind of as stressful as what you're going through with a group of people. It forms bonds. There's a reason people say like trauma bond because it's a real thing. And I think the folks who I was closest with in law school were the people who were in my 1L section that first year because you all went through it together. And I mean, those bonds are really hard to break. So it's a tough year, but it really is kind of such a unique time to be going through this and with the folks around you. So I hope you're enjoying it somewhat between all the work. So this next question was about public speaking. The question was, do you think public speaking skills for lawyers mostly come from training, or does it just build up over time and practice, particularly when going into court or appearing before agencies? So I'll start, and then would love for Timber and Alyssa's thoughts as well. Um, I I would say that typically our trial lawyers are the folks who are people who kind of know that about themselves. They don't need to come into a trial practice being, the best public speaker or like have those skills already like 10 out of 10. But I would say that generally the folks who are drawn to a trial practice are the folks who know about themselves that public speaking is not terrifying. You know that there's people out there who are like, I do not want to do public speaking. That is not for me. That I get sweaty and don't feel good when I think about public speaking. So there's so many other lawyer jobs out there. There's so many other legal jobs that don't require that. So I would just say don't force, the square peg in the round hole or whatever the saying is. You should find a practice that fits your skill set the best. Personally, I did theater growing up. I debated. I was already kind of in my extracurricular activities in high school and undergrad. I knew that public speaking was something that I enjoyed. I really liked the idea of trial work, just the advocacy involved. I also really liked writing, which is such a huge part of my practice as an associate and still is to this day. I write a lot. And so all of those skills, I knew I enjoyed kind of just the actual like minutia of the skill set. And so building a practice around that really worked out. And so that is ultimately what drew me to litigation work. But I would say that a lot of our folks who are coming into a litigation practice probably already have a strong base of public speaking skills and then draw upon that. And then they just get better through their actual client work. They're going to court, they're standing up, they're arguing motions, but also through our training programs. And not just through kind of the litigation training, but we also just have so many opportunities within the firm to do public speaking or for public speaking opportunities. And we really like our associates to get on their feet and exercise those muscles when they want to. And so, Timber, has that been your experience with kind of public speaking and the folks that you've come up with at the firm?
Yeah, no, it has. I think that you captured that really perfectly. Um, I'm public speaking right now. It's a great practice. Just to add to that, I mean, if you're really interested in litigation and you're terrified of public speaking, I have, for instance, a close friend who she like knew she wanted to litigate. She went in, she's a great brief writer, but she's absolutely terrified of public speaking, would make her sick. But she took this like a Toastmasters course. I don't know if you all have heard of that. And every, I think, week at like 6 a.m., she would meet up with another group of people who were terrified of public speaking, just like her. And she was able to get out of that. And now she's argued motions in front of the court with, still a significant amount of anxiety. But really worked through that. So that's all to say that if you're horrified of public speaking, but you feel like you really want to litigate, you want to be in court, there are definitely ways around that.
I will
Alyssa?
say I am one of those people that gets sweaty when public speaking, and I like have never been a fan of public speaking, and I think it was a concern of mine in law school where you kind of in law school I feel like they kind of make you believe that all of lawyers are like trial lawyers and are doing litigation. And I knew that that probably wasn't for me. So, like to Stephanie's point, there are a lot of other paths out there. Um, but I'll caveat that with saying that, even my practice, which is more regulatory and transactional, does require some public speaking. And I think, like Stephanie mentioned, our firm does a really good job at giving associates opportunities to practice. And I think over time, I have gotten a little bit more comfortable with practice and, giving presentations and being on panels. So then when I do have, meetings with clients and there's large groups on the phone, I don't feel terrified. So I think it's helpful to strike a balance, even if you aren't somebody who is a natural born public speaker.
That's a really good point. There are so many opportunities to grow and to strengthen that muscle. I will say, like, I do a lot of public speaking, just in the course of my job, but also in trials. I've had month-long trials where I'm in court every day in front of a jury, and then sometimes there's an audience full of people hearing me speak. I, spoke on a panel yesterday. But it's never easy. But that's what I like about my job. It's a challenging job. It's exciting. It sometimes, get a little butterflies in the stomach. I mean, that's what makes it fun. Um, with this job, I've never felt like, oh, it's just another day. I know exactly what's going to come across my desk, and it's just kind of like ho hum. Like that's something I really love about my job. Every day is new, and there are things that push me out of my comfort zone and challenge me. And what I've really enjoyed about working at B&E, B&E's the only law firm I've ever worked for, is that we have a lot of like-minded folks who want to grow and get better at things together, and we have a really good team here that support each other. So I appreciate Alyssa and Timber sharing their thoughts about it, because I think public speaking for a lot of folks is a scary thing. Like, oh gosh, I need to get better at this, or I want to work on this, or I never want to do it. And so I think there's a lot of different types of lawyers out there, and we can support each other and kind of find the best fit for ourselves. I did want to ask, I touched on this a little bit from a personal perspective, but I wanted to ask Alyssa and Timber kind of what drew you to your specific practice group. So Alyssa, why don't we start with you and I'll ask you what drew you to environmental work?
Yeah, I have a background in environmental science and engineering, so that's kind of what I did my undergraduate studies in. And while I was in undergrad, I took an environmental law class, and that's kind of what sparked my interest in law in the first place. I did not see myself being a lawyer. I thought I was going to be a scientist. Um, so I kind of went into law school knowing that my interest was environmental law. Um, but to Timber's earlier point, I took a lot of different classes in law school. Like I took environmental law classes, but I took, you know, corporations and national security and just a lot of classes that I thought sounded interesting, which I think have all been beneficial. Um, but I did come in kind of knowing I wanted to do environmental, and I think that's a common avenue in my group. It's not everybody, um, but that was kind of my background.
And Timber, what drew you to a litigation practice?
So I originally thought I wanted to do environmental law. And then as I progressed through law school, I realized I really wanted to be in a courtroom. And so I love kind of the thrill of writing a really good brief and knowing that you're getting your points across. Sometimes you're on the cutting edge of the law, and that's really exciting. I knew that I wanted to be in court, and um, I thought maybe at one point I wanted to do appellate work, but I ended up really enjoying trial work. So I clerked for a bit and um, just decided to jump for it and go straight into litigation. And what really kept me here is the people that I've worked with. Um, I've worked with two lawyers in particular where in my last firm, I worked for them on a number of matters. And then I moved here to BNE with them, and they really kind of inspired my further love for litigation and gave me a lot of opportunity in the practice to do more of the trial work. So I think it's been a slow progression toward litigation, and I've gotten more excited about it every year, as cheesy as that might sound.
I love to hear that. So a really good question in the chat was, can you discuss the similarities and differences between litigation work and investigations work? So I can answer that. So litigation work typically involves a disputes practice. So there's kind of multiple, or there's at least two parties who are adverse to one another, and they're trying to resolve their dispute either in courts or in arbitration in some type of venue, or maybe they're kind of at odds with each other in the lead up to what eventually will become a lawsuit of some kind. Investigations work is where a company generally is investigating some kind of complaint, and a complaint can bubble up in a lot of different ways. It can be a whistleblower, it can be something that the company discovered on its own, it could be a government notice that some kind of government actor has opened an investigation into the company. And so then the company is needing to investigate whatever the issue is that is bubbled up to the surface. And so investigations work is typically considered connected to a litigation practice because it can relate to litigation. It can result in litigation either with the government, with the whistleblower, with another various types of actors, or kind of litigation that's related to the underlying investigation. So they're similar but different in that a lot of investigations work is kind of more behind the scenes, at least at the outset. You're doing witness interviews, you're getting under the hood of the company's documents, trying to get to the bottom of whatever the issue is, and you're advising the company in connection with that issue. And sometimes it's navigating negotiations with the government. And this is where you kind of get into the white collar piece of it. So a lot of times you'll see folks who are like investigations and white collar lawyers. Sometimes an investigation will reveal that someone in the company may have criminal implications and they need a white collar lawyer, and kind of navigating that piece of it. Of course, that can then result in an indictment, and then there's litigation work. And so then the white collar lawyer is appearing in court. But typically, while the skill sets are very similar, that I would say is kind of the main difference between kind of litigation work, which is kind of more of what you might be familiar with of just trial work. You're appearing in front of juries and judges and arbitrators, versus investigations work, where you're more kind of reviewing, analyzing, investigating, and advising the company. Ultimately, that might lead to litigation, but a lot of that pre-work and that investigations work is different than kind of the more traditional litigation work. Okay, I think that was the last question in the chat. But I guess I'll just end it with this question. Timber, what advice do you have for some of the folks on the call today who want to be a litigator or trial lawyer like yourself?
Come try it out for a summer. I think the best way to know whether you want to be a litigator is to try out some litigation work and see if it kind of fits who you are and your overall vibe and the skill sets that you have.
Yep, that's great. Alyssa, same question to you. What advice do you have for folks who want to be an environmental lawyer?
Yeah, I think my advice is pretty similar to Timber's, in just getting practical environmental law experience. I think is really helpful. And we mentioned earlier, the different avenues of externships, clinics. I know some schools have environmental law clinics, which I think, unfortunately, my school did not, but I know a lot do. So those can be really good experience. Some people do environmental pro bono work in law school. And I think all those different types of hands-on experience can kind of help you decide whether or not this is something you're interested in. Um, and then, like Timber said, being like a summer associate and especially at B&E with our summer program, I think is a really good way to try the different groups that our firm has, and you kind of can see what fits your style more, what type of work you like. So just, trying it and seeing if it fits.
Yeah, that's great advice. I should say I'm impressed with all of you on the call already since you've taken the step of joining a call like this and hearing from lawyers about their practice. I would encourage you to keep doing that. This is a really interesting time in your life where you are kind of choosing a career trajectory. And I think it's a lot of kind of gathering information and hearing about all the different possibilities. And then it's a time of introspection too. You're thinking about, what do I like? What are my skill sets? What are the things that I would really like to see in a day to day? And so if you know what that is about yourself, then you can ask attorneys when you're networking with them to reference back to Timber's point about the importance of networking. When you're chatting with attorneys that you're networking with, ask them, what is your favorite part about your day to day, or what does your day to day look like? And start putting yourself in that lawyer's shoes and think, does that seem like it'll be the right fit for me? And a summer associate position is a fantastic way to do that. Here in our Houston office, our Houston office is our headquarters, but we do this in other offices as well. We have enough attorneys here where we have a rotational system where our summer associates actually move offices when they're in the CCL group, they sit on the CCL floor. They're here kind of having lunch every day with our CCL lawyers. And then when they move to environmental, their office we have a great conference services staff. They move their office, the summer associates office, to the environmental floor. And then for the few weeks that they're going through environmental, they're, having lunch with the environmental lawyers and doing activities with them and really getting a sense of what it is like to be an environmental lawyer. In our other offices, we try to mimic a rotational structure, but sometimes you're not actually moving offices depending on the size of that particular office. But what we really strive to do is to give our summer associates a sense of what a day-to-day is like for an associate in various practice groups. What is a day like if you're in DC and working with the environmental group and you're working with Alyssa? What does an associate's life look like in that group? Or if you're in New York and working with Timber or associates and our attorneys in our CCL group in New York, the goal is for you to really get a sense of kind of what life is like for a junior associate in that group. So with that, I think we'll call it an evening. Thank you all so much for joining, and we encourage you to apply for a summer associate program or position at V&E. So thank you all very much. Take care, and best of luck with your first year.